Welcome to the Mets pod, emergency pod. The Mets have signed Carlos Correa to a 12-year, $315 million deal. How did Joe find out? Was he awake? We'll get into that. How did I find out? What does this do for the team? This is an unprecedented time in Mets history, and we're here to break it all down. And as always, we will get to your mailbag questions. So a reminder to subscribe to the Mets pod so you don't miss emergency episodes like this at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SNY's YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Mets pod. I'm your host, Connor Rogers, joined as always by my co-host, Joe DeMayo. The last time you heard from us, we said it would be 2 weeks again until we did a show. We did not expect the Mets to make a major splash in the middle of the night, signing Carlos Correa to a 12-year, $315 million deal. I will waste no time to get Joe in here. I mean, man, we've had some big moments in doing Mets podcasting together, but nothing feels like this one, Joe. What was your reaction? How did you find out? Because I woke up to a lot of text messages. I was like, something is really, really wrong or something is really, really right. And for the first time in my life, I had a text from you, I think at 3 a.m. So what went on here and what was your reaction to this mega news?
I don't have a particularly wide set of skills generally. One of my greatest skills is sleeping. I am fantastic at going to sleep early, sleeping through the night. I don't wake up almost ever. For some random reason, last night, my body woke up at 2:15 or so, or 2:30, and I was struggling to fall back asleep. So I fell asleep early. I put on some awful Christmas movie on Netflix and just dozed off around 10 o'clock and woke up at 2-something, thinking that was weird, and tried to fall right back asleep. I tossed and turned a little bit, couldn't, so I just put on whatever was on TV and just hung out. And I get the notification from John Heyman that the Mets agreed with Correa. And I was like, let me double check this. This has to be a real account. I have to check all of this. And I genuinely just could not believe it. I mean, we know that this Mets team is doing everything that they can to win. And, we talked about on the show yesterday, like an outfielder makes perfect sense for his team. We knew there was the stuff with San Francisco and the press conference getting canceled and kind of some questions surrounding that. You could not have convinced me when I went to sleep last night that there was a chance that I was waking up with Carlos Correa being a New York Met.
There's a theme on this pod, and it's been a running theme for a couple of weeks now, is that nothing is off the table. Joe, you've always said dream big with Steve Cohen's New York Mets. You've said that from really the second that they got Lindor all the way on. And it felt like it's been the gas pedal, it was really pedal to the metal, right? The gas pedal was all the way down to the floor this offseason. As soon as DeGrom left, they pivoted to Verlander, and it only went up from there. This move, though, feels so different because of the nature of them not only aggressively moving back to Correa after whatever happened in San Francisco. We know it was according to them, a difference of opinion on a medical issue. And keep in mind, Correa had, I believe, $350 million deal. So this is a significantly lesser deal with the Mets. The annual average is obviously well below $30 million per year. Correa will move to third. He will play next to his friend from the Puerto Rican national team in Francisco Lindor. There are so many great things or good vibes around this move. But the nature of the way it went down, in the middle of the night, we've heard Steve Cohen was in Hawaii, maybe having a martini or something, and they get the deal done. Him and Billy Epler working late into the night. I know Andy Martino, SNY's insider, has said that as well. This really changes the entire perception of the Mets. And a lot of people listening might be sitting here and thinking, well, the Mets have spent a lot of money anyway. What does one more move do? Joe, to me, this truly puts them into a category of win the World Series or it's disappointing. And I know it's crazy to say. And I know the Mets can have a really, really good year this year and not win a World Series title. But this is Steve Cohen pushing all of the chips in and saying, I don't care about the financial impact of the luxury tax. Credit to them. They've kept their international money. They've kept their draft picks. They have significantly improved the New York Mets while not losing prospects, any of the other things I just listed, things that can make you a sustainable franchise going forward. But what they have done is, what Cohen's mission has been, is eliminate question marks and variables, right? We would love Brett Baty to come up and win the third base job out of spring training and be in the running for Rookie of the Year. At the end of the day, it was a question and a variable. What did they do? They went out and got Carlos Correa to play third base, a guy that has a Gold Glove caliber, obviously, ability at shortstop or third base, we believe. He adds more pop to the lineup. He obviously is a playoff performer. When DeGrom left, you get Verlander. When Bassett, we know Bassett's leaving, you get Quintana and Senga. They are trying to eliminate variables to win a championship in a way that you just don't see anybody in baseball doing this, Joe.
The reality is every team, ownership, front office, they talk about wanting to win a World Series. It's a phrase you hear everyone saying, we're doing this to try to win a World Series. Nobody is trying to win a World Series quite like Steve Cohen is trying to win a World Series.
Not even close.
And a PSA to Mets fans, let's take a second, sit back, and take in the fact that when Jacob deGrom left, there was a lot of questions of where do the Mets turn from here? And in exactly 3 weeks to this day, because 3 weeks ago they agreed with Justin Verlander, they signed in no order Justin Verlander, Kodai Senga, Jose Quintana, David Robertson, Adam Ottavino, traded for Brooks Raley, Omar Narvaez, who am I missing? Brandon Nimmo. Am I missing? And then top it off with Carlos Correa. Like, this is a commitment, over $800 million committed this offseason. And what it does is it puts a target on the Mets' back. There's no way around it. But, I mean, Mets fans, let's be honest. Gone are the days where Dellin Betances is the present under your Christmas tree. Gone are the days where you pick Jason Bay over Matt Holliday over, a few $1 million. It's a different time here. And, the target's on the back. The pressure is there. I firmly believe what a lot of top athletes say, that pressure is a privilege. And I think the Mets being under this pressure is a great thing, not just for them. I think it's a great thing for New York. I think it's a great thing for baseball, because baseball is a better sport when the New York and LA and Boston and those kind of teams are all doing well, spending, and competitive. So just absolutely unbelievable. But let's all take a second and realize this is an offseason you may never see again, where the Mets are spending close to $1 billion. Let's just call it what it is. Closer to $1 billion than not on talent this offseason.
Man, I'm really glad you put it like that. Is now you're in the crosshairs a little bit, right? Where you're the big bad Mets. You are the team that's trying to go buy a championship. You are the team that is, imagine how Giants fans feel. And I do feel for them. It's not one of those like stomp in the face of them. That's a tough situation to deal with. We as Mets fans know better than anybody what it's like when you think your team is not doing enough to improve for the following year. But it reminds me of maybe my favorite quote ever from Rex Ryan, who said, this is the family version, by the way, but it was on Hard Knocks. He said, the best place to be is when expectations are high. Get used to it. He didn't like being under the radar or a Cinderella story or coming into the year that nobody cares about you. And that's what the Mets remind me of right now. Is they're not trying to be some feel-good story. They are trying to be the biggest, baddest team in baseball, and they are trying to set themselves up that way. And they are doing it with, we think, a roster that meshes together. We saw that under Buck last year. We saw that with the addition of a guy like Marte and his leadership, Scherzer's leadership, what Lindor has done since he's been here. You get a guy like Correa that understands what it takes to win a championship, understands what it's like to perform under the bright lights in October, something that, quite frankly, the Mets struggled with last year. That's a big-time move. It's a really, really big-time move. So before we do get into the mailbag, I don't want to overlook the specifics of, what we think of Correa as a player and how he fits, right? You could dance and sing another $300 million player, and it's awesome, and pound your chest, and I'm with you all the way. But, Joe, I do want to get into the specifics a little bit. Like, how do you think Correa fits into this lineup? Where are some spots you think he fits? And And what are the Mets getting defensively? Because I think outside of some highlights going around from the World Baseball Classic of him at third base, a lot of people don't understand the kind of gifted player he is. And when you look at the left side of the Mets infield right now, I mean, I can't think of a time of watching the Mets where, and I know David Wright and Jose Reyes were amazing. Do not get me wrong. But I still can't think of a time like this, man. I really, really can't.
I can't either. From a defensive standpoint, you obviously
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
you're unsure, right, of what it exactly it's going to be. But Carlos Correa is not just a Gold Glove, but a Platinum Glove winner at shortstop, and you're shifting him over to third base where he has really good hands. I think that's going to translate well. You probably saw those in those defensive highlights. He's got plenty of arm for the position. And him and Lindor being as close as they are, I think they're going to have really good chemistry on positioning and working together on the left side of the infield there. And then when you talk about the lineup, one of the criticisms of this Mets offseason prior to this was, all right, they spent a lot of money. All right, they replaced some guys, but they're bringing back the same lineup that struggled down the stretch, that didn't do the job in Game 3 of the wild card series, got one hit. And this changes everything. I mean, Carlos Correa, I think we're looking at a top 6, and we can play with the order a little bit. You have Nimmo at the top, you have Marte, you have Lindor, you have Alonso, you have Correa, and then you have Jeff McNeil. So you could kind of play with the order how you want, but I personally think I like Correa in the 5 spot.
Me too.
Protecting Alonso. And the one thing that this team definitely needed was some power. And Correa will provide that to a degree. But I think what people need to realize is Correa is a fantastic baseball player. And he's a sum of his parts, right? Like, he's not a masher. Like, he's not going to come here probably and hit 35 home runs in any season. He's going to be around 25 home runs, but he can hit for average. He can work counts. He gets on base. He has power. And that's not just home run power. He has extra base hit power. So you're going to get doubles. You're going to get the defense. Like, he's going to be one of those 5+ win players. And, he is a true sum of his parts where he does everything pretty well. I mean, other than he's not really going to steal many bases for you, but from a general standpoint, his skill set fits perfectly. And, if we're being honest, like, I was advocating for Michael Conforto, and I think that, obviously was a good idea when we were talking just yesterday, but
we would have been thrilled.
But Carlos Correa certainly adds a different layer to this offense that they don't have. And it just makes everything so much deeper. Now, the DH spot, Vogelback and whoever, you're batting them 7th or 8th. Mark Canha down in the 7 or 8 spot, where now his pitch selectivity is, extending down to the bottom of the lineup and helping, get this thing back to the top. So they're deeper, they're stronger. The impact that this it's massive. It truly is.
Here's another thing, Joe, that is super under the radar on all of this. We've talked about for how long this Mets team, their issues against left-handed pitching. Correa demolished left-handed pitching last year. Traditionally, that's who he is. Last year against lefties, he had a 945 OPS against left-handed pitching. He's a guy that slugging was 545. I mean, when you look at the Mets, look at the Mets' problems coming into the offseason of next year. And saying they don't hit against left-handed pitching, it's not going to be number 1 or number 2. Refilling the rotation, getting more overall offense in the lineup as a whole. Those are things that stood at the top, rebuilding the bullpen. But in terms of day-to-day matchups, now you feel like you don't have to reinvent the entire wheel to produce enough against lefties, because you have a guy that'll probably sit in either somewhere 3 to 5 in the lineup the entire season that destroys lefties. So there is so much to this signing to be really, really excited about with Correa, because like you said, I mean, former number 1 overall pick. So you're talking about just tools and talent that has already quickly hit the field from his early 20s all the way up until now. He's 28 on the 12-year deal. So he will be a New York Met for a very, very long time. And above it all, just the message this is sent across the entire league of who the Mets are and who the Mets are going to continue to be.
It's an absolute statement that this team is willing to do what it takes to go over the top. Like that's a phrase you often hear, like make the move that puts you over the top. Signing Carlos Correa when you have Eduardo Escobar, who's perfectly fine, when you have Brett Baty on the cusp of being big league ready to play every day, you still sign Carlos Correa because you want to put this team over the top. And it's a credit to the Mets and, credit to Steve Cohen. And yeah, I mean, and you look at Correa, like, think about this, like everything that came from the sign stealing scandal, you want to talk about pressure? The pressure's been on that guy at every ballpark ever since then. He gets booed. He's been getting booed everywhere he goes. He's performed, like you said, in the big moments. I think this is a guy that was made to be in New York City. And this is just, I think, a perfect marriage. The 12 years, it kind of is what it is. It's long. I'm typically not a fan of these super long contracts, but I almost wonder, to a degree, are you seeing a trend where these teams are willing to go much longer on the length to shrink the AAV and almost look at it in a way like maybe deferred money? Like if Carlos Correa is 38 years old, 39 years old in the last year or two of his deal, and he's kind of cooked, you could cut him and do what they're doing with Robinson Cano, just pay him 20-something million to not be around for the year or two. But you're getting Carlos Correa's prime years at 28 years old through 32, 33. That's considered your prime. And I don't think there's any Met fan right now that can look at this and not be ecstatic.
All right, let's get into some of the questions here because I'd like to get through as many as we can. So we'll try to be a little concise here. And I had to laugh at Drew Smith, by the way, tweeting, "What did I miss?" I threw that one in our favorites in the mailbag, just as a little laugher there. This one from Aurelio Morales, who said, "What do you think would be the best option? McNeil at second and Canna in left, Escobar at second and McNeil in left, Correa at second and Escobar at third with McNeil in left." Do you think, number one, it's also nice that Buck, we know, loves to play with things out in the field to give guys a breather here and there. So just writing down that versatility as a whole is a nice thing to see.
Correa at third. He is the third baseman every day, except if he spells Lindor for a day or two at short. Correa is not playing second base for the Mets. I don't think that shouldn't be a consideration. McNeil is a borderline Gold Glover at second base, so I would like him there as much as possible. But if you have Eduardo Escobar on the team, there's days where you could get him in the lineup and put McNeil in the outfield, or give McNeil a day off and you have Escobar at second. I think the best situation right now, as the roster's constructed, which we know that could change, they could trade Eduardo Escobar, and this is a moot point here. But for me, it's Correa at third, it's McNeil at second, it's Canna in left, and it's Escobar splitting time with Vogel back at DH and spelling the infield on days off and things like that.
I'm with you. Absolutely. All right. This one from JMD. He said, "How many of these 10 plus $300 million plus mega deals are possible? Is Ohtani next year still in play?"
Why wouldn't it be? I mean, the Mets have a bunch of money coming off the books despite Correa. But to the overall point, there is probably a limit to how many of these they could do.
We've said this so many times, and it just keeps happening.
In reality, it's the only like crazy long-term deals are Lindor, Correa, and Nimmo, right? Like no one else is on a super, super long deal. It's all 5 or less otherwise. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's, I assume, some limit, but I'm at the point now that if anyone asks any question that starts with, "Is blank possible?" the answer is just yes. No matter what the question is, no matter how it's framed, the answer is yes going forward. Anything is possible. And I would not be ruling Ohtani out. I doubt that Steve Cohen would have signed Carlos Correa if he knew it took him out of the race for Shohei Ohtani.
This one from Julia, who inspired our Mets Santa long form discussion. She said, "Is Santa Todd Zeile the chosen one?" Santa Todd Zeile is here to stay, in my eyes. It's not only, did we reverse the curse, Joe? We have to ask the question.
You took it away from a player. Things are looking up. Yeah, I think Todd spends a lot of time here on SNY, and I think every year now for at least the next couple of years, as things hopefully keep trending in the right direction, just throw that Santa suit on Todd every year.
I'll get in Gelbs' ear and see if he's going to be down for it one year. This one from Brian. And this is a really big discussion on Twitter right now. So I do want to carve out a little section here for this. He asked, do you think what the Mets are doing is good for baseball? Should a team be allowed to spend $500 million, double the spending of the next highest team over a 3-year period? And then in parentheses, he said 1.6 billion to 800 million.
Absolutely, unequivocally, yes, this is good for baseball. The people that are talking about this, they are pointing the finger in the wrong direction. The finger should not be getting pointed at the team that spends, because that's what this game is about. In the offseason for excitement, like the baseball offseason is so long and arduous. Like, this is exciting. And that is in turn good for baseball. And I talked about it before. The New York teams being competitive is good for baseball. What is not good for baseball is, Steve Cohen's paying this $100+ million luxury tax. Guess where that money goes? To the teams that are not spending money. There is TV revenue deals that are split amongst the teams. That goes to the teams that don't spend. The teams that are pocketing the revenue that they get and not reinvesting it in their team, like, to me, those are the people that are, or teams that are bad for baseball. It's not the Mets. And, to a degree, do you want the Mets to constantly be so far ahead of the pack? No. And I don't think Steve Cohen has visions of that being the case year in and year out. But to me, I think spending money is a good thing, especially when you know how much money is in the game. And all these team owners are billionaires. None of them are, living paycheck to paycheck. Like, they're getting revenue to some degree, some more than others, of course, in bigger markets. I understand that, but it is good for baseball when teams are spending money.
Here's the reality, Joe. Baseball needs a salary floor. It needs to be done. And I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. No. But
the problem is, they're not going to take a salary floor without a salary cap, and there's not going to be a salary cap, so there won't be a salary floor. But they have, hopefully in the next collective bargaining agreement, I'd like to find a way where they could incentivize teams to spend more money. I don't know how exactly do it. I don't know if you give draft picks or do something if you spend a certain amount of money, but there's got to be a way to incentivize these teams, because I feel for those fan bases, truly.
I completely do. We know that.
Yeah. The fans of, yeah, exactly. We know about it, but the fans of the kind of middle to lower market franchises, like, they go to spring training and they know for an absolute fact that their team is just no chance to win. And there should never be a year where there's a ton of teams that feel like they have no chance at all. So there has to be a way to incentivize those teams to spend the revenue that they receive.
I'm with you. It's the Mets doing this is not the issue at hand. It's people reading the headlines and saying, is this the issue? And overlooking the actual inner working issues. And that's the fact of the teams, like you said, that are not truly trying to compete on that level. And listen, this obviously a lot of the teams that are huge competitors of the Mets. Obviously the Yankees with the city rivalry, but more importantly, the Phillies in the division, the Padres who knocked the Mets out of the playoffs last year, the Dodgers and Braves who are right up there in the top 10, who the Mets could easily run into in the playoffs at any point. And when those teams make a big move, we like the competition. It's great when the Phillies going and getting Trey Turner and Taijuan Walker and making these moves. Like, as a Mets fan, do you want the Phillies to win games? No. But you love what it does. It creates an atmosphere that is great for the game. You know what's not good for the game? Whatever the Oakland Athletics are doing, whatever the Baltimore Orioles, who have so much young talent, same with the Tampa Bay Rays, not even entering the market at all, not even sniffing. These teams, Joe, they don't need to go out and get the $300 million guys. That's not what we're saying. But to not even enter the mid-tier starting market where you can get a guy for 3 years, $60 million that can go out and drastically improve your win total and drastically improve your rotation and the looks of your team. That's the big issue right now, is that there's a competition at the top and it's very, very much in a vacuum. And that's not the fault of the New York Mets or the other teams that are spending. So I think it's a fascinating question because it's interesting, and I'm not saying Brian was looking at it this way, but it's interesting that the majority is looking at it that way.
It's definitely there needs to be more competitive balance. I think you're seeing it get better. I think Hal Steinbrenner actually said that at the press conference today. It is somewhat getting better, but there needs to be more teams meeting in the middle a bit.
This one from Michael Nitsky. He said, 1, did the Mets sign Correa because they can, or did they never consider Baty a legit MLB third baseman? 2, is there anyone in the farm system besides Alvarez who they consider a future MLB regular?
All right, in order, yes, because they can. I think that was probably the driving force, that they can and they want to win. And they do like Brett Baty. And I talked to someone with the Mets earlier today and asked, can Brett Baty play left field? And I was told, oh, yes, he can. So I think that is what you're looking at, is Baty really getting used to that bigger glove, taking more reps in the outfield. And I think you'll see him in AAA Syracuse to start the year. And, we'll see how he develops as a left fielder. I think they just saw an opportunity for Carlos Correa that Steve Cohen kind of wished he acted on maybe a little earlier than he could have. And it came back to him. So he was like, I'm not going to let this pass me by twice. So, I think Baty as a left fielder certainly fits. And as far as everyday players, I mean, there's Alvarez, obviously. There's Baty. There's certainly potential for Kevin Parada. There's Alex Ramirez. There's Jet Williams. I still like Mark Vientos. Roddy Mauricio had a massive winter ball. He won MVP of the Dominican Winter League. So maybe his stock is kind of coming back up. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, but there are everyday guys that you could look at in this farm system. It's going to take some time. And, like Connor said up at the top of the show, they lost no draft picks by signing $800 million worth of players. They lost no international bonus money. They're actually net +2 draft picks because they get 2 picks for DeGrom and Bassett leaving. So they're going to continue to be aggressive to build up this farm system and this player development, and all that while giving you a $390 million payroll and attempting to win the World Series in 2023. Like, what more can you ask for?
Show up at the ballpark, right? That's all you could say. Yep. Show up to the ballpark, support this team. This is just something that we have never seen as Mets fans. And there's going to be so much excitement in spring training to opening day throughout the season that we can't wait for. So with that, I think we won't be back until right after the new year. I'm at the point now where I don't even know what to say anymore. I keep lying. I'm saying we're not going anywhere. I'm saying we're taking a break. I'm just going to say, I've enjoyed this so much, and we enjoy everyone's support so much. Waking up and seeing tweets asking for an emergency pod is what makes this thing go, so we love it. So a happy holidays to everybody, and a reminder, subscribe to the Mets pod so you never miss moments like these. The episode will be in your feed immediately at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all over SNY, especially SNY's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your shows. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.